This is a Decentered podcast from Rob Watson. Conversations about community media. Look out for Decentered Media on Twitter and on iTunes, or go to decentered.co.uk. Hello, it's Friday the 29th of May, and this is a Decentered Media podcast with me, Rob Watson. Today I'm joined over Zoom by Dr. Jen Unwin and Dr. David Unwin. Jen has worked in the NHS for nearly 30 years, and over this time she's been interested in the way that people cope with and even thrive with long-term health challenges. Jen believes that patients who are able to maintain their hopefulness and emotional well-being in the face of illness will often have a better quality of life. They experience fewer symptoms, take less medication, consult less, and even live longer. And Jen's a solution-focused practitioner and current chair of the UK Association of Solution-Focused Practice. David is a GP based in Southport. David is the Royal College of General Practitioners National Champion for Collaborative Care and Supporting Planning in Obesity and Diabetes, as well as a clinical expert in diabetes. David's written and published in both medical journals and the popular press in recent years about the topic and experience of managing low-carb diets, particularly with a focus on diabetes. And what we want to talk about today is this kind of idea of low-carb. What is it? What's it about? What the experience has been like, the journey, if you like, of how you've kind of discovered this and now are part of a really broad, wide network of people who have got similar views and similar experiences. And if you later on, we'll also talk about how you've established and are part of the Public Health Collaboration UK, which is a registered charity dedicated to informing and implementing healthy decisions for better public health. So I never normally do a long introduction, but I thought you kind of get this one right, and you deserve that long introduction, I think.
So I'm actually ex-chair of the UK SFP now, not current chair, just to clarify that.
Oh, right, okay. It's always good to give up a role, isn't it, and focus on something else.
Definitely, yeah.
So how's I suppose we've got to ask the inevitable question: how's lockdown been for you? How's social distancing managing?
Well, of course, I'm not really, because I'm a GP, I'm not that locked down. So I still get to go to work and I still get to see other people, which is quite nice. Apart from that, the lockdown aspect of our life is very relaxing. I think it's actually better. It's actually
very peaceful.
It's peaceful because we don't have the mad pressure to fly places, go places, buy things and do things.
So we live rurally, so that's just been so nice, really.
I live in what's called the West End of Leicester, so it's 15 minutes walk from the city centre, and to see the flourishing of nature in the city, it's completely transformed. The trees seem fuller, the birds are certainly louder. The flowers and the bees are out. It's remarkable. Whether I'm just noticing that and it's always there, or whether there is a measurable distance, I kind of don't know.
I think it's interesting that we've all had more time to notice some of the good things, like the weather. For me, I've noticed a lot more birds and wildlife, and I think maybe I'm too busy sometimes to even notice it.
Yeah.
So we've had quite a good lockdown. Yeah. We've been ill. We've both had COVID, but recovered from it.
Yeah, same here. So early March. So it's not.
We are interacting differently with people, aren't we? On the topic of, I think perhaps we've been using social media more, and we've definitely been using Zoom for our patient meetings and keeping in touch with family. And I've been do some private work, so I've been doing that over Zoom, and also just with patients, haven't you? You've been on the phone to people, and a different way of interacting, really, but not necessarily worse in some ways. Interesting. It's had some kind of benefits, really.
So in the practice now, 3/4 of the patients I'm ringing up, and we're doing it over the phone. some of them we're doing through open window. We're being very ingenious, really. So sometimes they show me through a window, or they turn up in a car. And once or twice I've done injections where they just put their arm out of the car, all sorts of things. There is a great sense where we've been working together. I've felt a lot of support for the health service, and people are so kind and patient, amazingly
and
so.
flexible. We've all just settled into a new normal, haven't we? And there's some people who don't want to go back to the old normal necessarily.
So let's think about what that normal might be, because let's put it bluntly, we can't go back to a high carb diet, which is causing we can't afford now to have high rates of diabetes and obesity.
People are sort of making that link, and that's the big message that we try and get out, that it does seem like, when you look at the evidence, that that has been a major factor in why people have got really ill. I mean, a lot of us have had it and been unwell, but the people who've got really unwell, there does seem a lot of explanatory power in the sort of obesity, poor blood glucose control, high blood pressure, kind of that whole metabolic type of thing. So that how can we get that message out, and also then how can we try and persuade the powers that be to take a different approach? Because clearly the one we've been taking for the last 20 or 30 years, things are just getting worse in that respect. They're not getting better. So to keep doing the same thing or insisting on the same message seems a little bit crazy.
So I think the figures for the UK are pretty stark, aren't they? So in global as in UK terms, I think 54% of meals produced every day in the UK are convenience ready meals, highest rate in Europe. Hence, we have the highest rate of diabetes and obesity in Europe. Now, is that if that's a correlation or a cause? I'll let other people argue about that. I know some people get very kind of specific about that, but just tell us a bit about how, what's this journey been like? How did you, David, you've talked about this, I've seen you talk, and there's lots of videos on YouTube, so I'll point people in the direction of them as well. But what was what was that transition from suddenly realizing that, hang on a minute, this is a problem in your practice and you need to change something about the way that you deal with it?
I think it's one of those things that once you see it, you can't believe you didn't see it earlier. So for me, a lot of it was a sense of awakening. And I couldn't believe I'd been so stupid for the first 25 years of being a doctor, where all I did was prescribe drugs for people. And I never really thought about the true causes of illness. And then one day, a patient came in who had reversed her diabetes spectacularly and come off medication, made me look an idiot. And she was quite right to do so, because I'd never once thought about why that lady was ill, and that for her, with diabetes and obesity, it boiled down to sugar. And that she said herself, why did you never once mention that bread and breakfast cereal and potatoes and rice all turn into large amounts of sugar? And when she gave up all of these things, she lost stones in weight, came off her medication, and her blood glucose, her blood sugar was normal.
At the same time, so a number of things came together all at once today, about 7 years ago. So at the same time, so I've been a lifelong sugar addict, and I'd picked up a book by Dr. John Briffa called Escape the Diet Trap. And I'd been reading bits of that out to David, and it was basically explaining about low carb, and it's only a little book, but it kind of really struck me, and I thought, right, this is the next thing I'm going to try. So I tried it and felt better, and kept reading bits out to David. So that was happening at the same time, and then also, David was sort of a bit fed up with general practice, really, and thinking about retiring. So we had a conversation, a solution-focused conversation about, what might make his work more exciting, or maybe, we'd always wondered about doing some work together. We'd never worked together, even though we both work in Southport. Obviously, David had been doing his GP and I'd been doing my psychology at the hospital. So we actually quite wanted to work on a project together. So all of these things kind of came together to this alchemy of, why don't we set up a group intervention for pre-diabetics to see if we can help them, because I'd always run loads of groups. Doctors don't tend to do that, but in my practice I could see the power of that, and I love working with people together. So we thought, right, okay, we'll have a go. And we did it in our own time, at our own cost in the evenings. And the first group went amazingly well. People did incredibly well. And some of those people are still now coming to the groups and helping other people. They sort of turn into advocates for this approach themselves because they've lost 7 stone, come off all their medication. And we've had the most amazing health transformations. And then, of course, people do become passionate because they feel, again, like we've just been saying, that actually they'd had the wrong information. They'd been trying, knocking their heads against a brick wall, just getting sicker and sicker. And suddenly they had this simple, it's a really simple message, the low carb message, and they got it, they did it, and the rest is history. And that's why a lot of, like ourselves and a lot of the patients, become very passionate about it, because you kind of feel that information has sort of been suppressed in some way, or not shared when, or even given as an option when it makes such a difference to people.
And I think for me, what had happened for years, you become a doctor, not particularly to make money, but you become a doctor because you want to make a difference. And really, I was giving myself a good hard look, and really I wasn't making much difference. I was 55 years old, and work was I was a disappointment to myself because, it isn't happy to just prescribe drugs for people. They
watch them get worse.
They didn't get better. You see, they just got fatter and sicker. And I'd add one drug and then another and another. And I was deeply disappointed in myself. You have a dream as a doctor that patients will be grateful and look healthy and everything's amazing. And that hardly ever happened. Patients never thank you for the atenolol or the drugs you give,
metformin,
because they don't suddenly feel better. But for the very first time, and so late in my career, I was seeing large numbers of patients looking amazing, coming in the lightest they'd been for decades. I'd never seen this before. So very rapidly, I was wide awake and loving it. It was I was really looking forward to seeing patients, wondering how they were doing. When the blood tests started coming in day after day, I used to keep opening the blood tests as a treat to the end of the day. So it turned, normally opening blood tests is a chore because it's full of, oh dear, she's worse, that one's bad, I have to ring you up and tell them off. These blood tests were full of amazing results. I didn't know it was, I thought people would think I was a fraud because the results of the sugar, the blood tests on sugar, the blood tests on liver was so amazing. So ever so quickly, I was very late in the day becoming the sort of doctor I'd always hoped to be, like a magician.
And motivated again.
With people thanking me and looking wonderful. And we've got some amazing before and after photos. And it's medicine as it could be for so many other people. And medicine as it could be for doctors, and medicine as it could be for patients, where you're working together. That was the other thing. It was truly collaborative, because we were learning with the patients. I remember the book that Jen mentioned. We actually bought, I think, 20 copies of that book and shared it with the patients to say, what do you make? So that was a very different approach, to say to patients, read this book, what do you think?
I think one of the early books I read was John Yudkin.
Yes.
I can't remember the title, but it's about kind of the sugar myth. That's it. That's the
Pure
title.
White and Deadly.
And just the message has been around for a long time. What is it that crowds out the simplicity then of that message? Where does it come from that we?
That's such a good question. I think there's sort of several levels of that. I think at a personal level. And a sort of biological level. So my belief, and plenty of evidence, I think that actually carbohydrates and sugar, particularly for some of us, are addictive. So the thought of giving them up, people don't want to hear it. It's like a cognitive dissonance. No, there must be another way.
Yeah, I call myself a carbaholic. I literally just can't go back to them. I've got to steer clear from them.
got to steer clear, and I think that's actually the case for much more people, many more people than we think. But actually, the thought of that, you have to get to quite a bad place before you think, actually, I really need to give this stuff up. Just the same as smoking or drinking, it's just the same principle, I think. So I think that's one factor. And then I think another factor has obviously been the low fat guidelines. So going back to when they were brought in the 70s, and that actually looking back now, it does seem like the science, they went the wrong way with the science. They should have gone Yudkin's way, which would have been low sugar, low carbohydrate, and they went the low fat way. Ansel Keys, wasn't it? Mm. And if you look at the work of Zoe Harcombe, I don't know if you might be able to link to her website, but if she did her PhD on was the evidence there in the 70s to bring in those low fat guidelines, and the short answer is no. But obviously, if you take the fat out of everything, that allows food manufacturers to do that. Somebody has to take the fat out of everything, so you need a food manufacturer. And then to actually make it taste half decent, you have to add the sugar back in. So we all went on to a much higher sort of sugar, low-fat diet. We all followed those guidelines. Sam at the PhD has the evidence which shows that actually people are quite good at following the guidelines around eating low-fat, but actually it doesn't.
And particularly when they're endorsed, and the typical story I've heard of, your diabetes nurse gives you a leaflet and it says eat baked potatoes and bananas, and you may as well be giving them a bag of sugar. We had a friend who was told to have a slice of Bakewell tart at bedtime in case his sugar went too low, or two if it went even lower. Yeah. So there's
I think there are other factors I'd like to. I think the other factor is the idea of a treat mentality that's come in, where go on, treat yourself. Mm. And advertising as to children, advertising generally.
Basically, the food manufacturers.
The idea that you deserve a treat. And we've gone, when I was young, a treat was on a Friday once a week. And now people are living, they've normalised snacking.
Or like, Chris, if you look at Christmas, Easter, birthdays, they're all sort of, it's all about sugar, it's all about cakes and donuts and
well, particularly the way we reward children. So you did well in your maths test. Teachers give sweets in schools. Grandparents who love their grandchildren give them bars of chocolate. And this is a weird kind of love, because I'm dealing later on, and Jen is, that this is how would you form addiction in somebody? You would reward them. Yeah. You want to train a dog, you give it chocolate drops. We're training our children that rewards it's the first drug that we get, is sugar.
Children get, yeah.
And it's so I'm dealing with teenagers who cannot give up sugar by then. That's another factor. Another factor is I've got to hold my hand up, is doctors. So it's very odd. As a medical student, I was taught all about sugar and starch, because really doctors have known about low carb for well over 100 years. And at medical school we were taught that. But then the paradigm has changed since I was a medical student. The paradigm now is what's wrong with you and what's the drug to fix it. Mm. And we now have a conspiracy, in my opinion, between doctors like me who feel pressure to prescribe and patients who expect an easy fix and the tablet, rather than to have to do something that's a little bit more painful, like change your lifestyle. Mm. But the lie is that came to roost for me was that didn't work very well. So yes, I prescribed, and yes, the patients took the medication, but they weren't any healthier, and I missed that for 25 years. And I was so rapidly awake. So and then there's aspects of planning. We've allowed fast food outlets near schools. Our streets are filling with this. There's a whole machinery, really, to sell us junk food. For convenience.
But not to the extent that we're doing it in the UK. So other countries have they don't have this model. I mean, I was very disappointed cycling past a nearby drive-in chicken place, and the queue of cars waiting outside.
Isn't that depressing?
Yeah.
Really depressing. That shows how addictive it is. Like,
They couldn't wait to go back
I
to
did a
it.
tweet actually, because someone had posted a video of one of those queues, and what are the characteristics of addiction? They are, craving something and willing to kind of go to extraordinary lengths to get to satisfy the, and there it is in action. People queuing for 2 hours in their cars to get a bucket of chicken. There's no other explanation than the addictive properties of that food, because you could roast a chicken in that time.
Yeah, I mean that's the con inconvenience, isn't it? The convenience is quicker. The microwave is quick. It's not. It takes longer most of the time, and some basic.
Yeah.
So there's
I had a steak and broccoli for tea last night. We both did. It was ready in about 5 minutes flat, because we have it medium rare, and we pinged the broccoli in the microwave. Well, there's nothing faster than that. Locally sourced meat from the butcher. Locally produced vegetables. And
it feels odd, doesn't it, when you go into the butcher's and you're looking for the fatty, because I find in supermarkets, I can't stand chicken breast. It's too lean, it's too dry.
Yes.
I'm used now to the parts of the chicken that have the fat in it, because that's where the flavour is.
We need to support the butchers, and our butcher always laughs because he has a special kind of bacon under the counter, which is it's at least half fat, isn't it? He makes it himself. We call it the contraband bacon, and he only gets it out for special people.
You can imagine how surprised I was when the blood test started coming in on the cholesterol and the lipids. I was doing that because I was scared about what the results would be because of all the fatty meats that we're all having. And to my utter amazement, the results were significantly better, despite the cream, the full-fat milk, and the eggs. And I keep thinking, what's going on? Because the results aren't what I expect.
So what have you learned that is going on? And the smoking gun is insulin. What's happened? I read, it might have been Gary Taubes had said it, kind of if you went back to the 18th century, kind of George Washington or something like that, they might have maxed out their insulin levels twice a year. When berries are available in the fields or whatever, and then when you've pickled you've made them into jams, and then you have a feast at Christmas or something like that. Twice a year, we're maxing out our insulin levels every day,
day after day.
So start the day with cereal and a glass of orange juice or some toast. Any of those things. It's just sugar, digest into sugar. Have the meal deal at lunchtime, the sandwich with the crisps and the bar. It's all sugar apart from whatever was in your sandwich, which is probably a little sad piece of processed chicken. Go home and have pasta with sauce on. It's sugar. All you've had all day is sugar. You've not had any protein or good fats, which is what your body and your brain need to be healthy. And we've just all been conned, basically.
I think. And again, I wasn't asking intelligent questions. And what does insulin do with sugar? Why did I never ask that question? What does insulin do with sugar? And of course, insulin pushes sugar into your muscles for energy. But actually, if day after day you eat more sugar than you need for energy, where does the rest of the sugar go? It goes into your belly fat, middle-age spread, and into your liver, fatty liver, and we've now got a situation where 20% of the developed world has fatty liver, and we just need to ask why. And everybody's rushing around saying, "Oh, that's why have we got all these people with diabetes?" And I think the answers are reasonably simple. And as you say, we are the fat man of Europe, and the junk food.
And this idea that you need sugar for energy, isn't it? Like a Mars a day and all of those sort of messages about, you need carbohydrate for energy. It's just not true. We don't eat any. Obviously, in the early days, we have to adapt and everything, but actually your body makes the sugar that you need for your brain to work and so on. You do need a little bit, but your liver will manufacture that for you from the proteins and the fats. So in your bloodstream at any one time, all of us healthy people have less than 1 teaspoon of sugar. Well, in a banana, there's 6 teaspoons of sugar. So just that simple fact, I was amazed when I heard that because I'd always sort of you know, like yourself, kind of thought, oh, I need a banana in mid-morning or an apple, keep my energy up, kind of thing. That was just a mistake.
Another very important part of the jigsaw is the fact that insulin stops you from being able to burn fat. So Jen and I have been keto now probably for 6 to 7 years. So we're fat burners. And people love to be fat burners because that's the best way to get rid of your belly. But insulin prevents you from being able to burn fat. So that's why if you eat biscuits all day long, you're still hungry.
You're hungry.
Because you cannot access the enormous amounts of energy locked up in your own belly. And it's that one of the things the patients absolutely notice is lack of hunger. I'm told that in every clinic I ever run, how surprised they are. They say, do I have to eat breakfast? Because I'm not really hungry. That's because sometimes people are accessing fat as a fuel for the first time in years, and they're actually not hungry. And that is to do with, so insulin is central to obesity, central to diabetes, central to hunger. And those are some of the ideas that we're trying to promote through social media.
One of the things you've got on, and it's listed on your Twitter account, David, which is the infographics that you've done, which really show that stark relationship in terms of just explain a little bit about that, and I'll make sure there's a link to them.
I will. So I became very interested in the glycemic index and the low GI diet, and I was trying to explain to my patients about eating low glycemic index foods. But I discovered that patients became confused because the answer comes out in grams of glucose. So that so much food potato is equivalent to grams of glucose. But my patients aren't really familiar with glucose as a substance, so that they just glazed over, nor do they understand grams very well. So I got together with an expert on carbohydrates, and we redid the calculations for 800 foods in terms of teaspoons of sugar, so that I can tell somebody that if you have 150 grams of boiled rice, that will affect your blood sugar to the same extent as consuming 10 teaspoons of sugar. And that single fact has people understanding how starch is sugar. And all of those infograms on my Twitter account are there to help people rapidly understand how to make better dietary choices. Because it's so simple to avoid sugar that people with diabetes know to do that, but they don't know about cornflakes and rice and bread. And that's why I did it. It's a reworking of the glycemic load.
And actually, in terms of sort of communicating all of this, the real coup was that NICE, the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, have adopted those infographics and attached them to their diabetes guidance, their type 2 diabetes guidance. So that has actually been a major step forward in actually getting the message out and accepted more widely in healthcare. So that one thing led to another. And
I think for people interested in other things not low carb, it also illustrates some general principles about communicating, so that you have to bear in mind, you have to think like your audience. So as I just explained, my audience did not understand glucose and did not understand grams. So if you can't get that across, you have to think of a new way to get it across. And it's no use thinking they're stupid or not listening. That's the sort of way I operated for 25 years. I had to find a way to get my message to people that would interest them. The other thing is visuals are so good because not all my patients want to read things and they don't want a long explanation. But I'm dyslexic, so I can't spell. So actually, I don't like to write long things anyway. For me, an infographic is so powerful. And this is the new world. And I hated mobile phones and everything to do with media. But at the end of the day, I really did. If we wish to communicate, we have to cotton on to these ideas of infographics. Who is the audience? And my audience were ordinary people in the north of England who you could misinterpret. I used to think they didn't care about their health because they didn't seem to listen to me. It was actually my fault because my method of communication was poor. People do care about health. They do. And the other thing, which is Jen's thing, are what are the goals of your audience?
Yeah.
My audience did care.
That there is a kind of sense that you have to push through a lot of fog, might be a good way of describing it, before you can get some clarity about the choices. And I saw a great phrase the other day about marginal decisions. I was reading, I've said this a couple of times recently, Jane Jacobs' book about the life and death of the American city. And what she talks about is the way that we redesign our cities. And again, it's timely at the moment with the interest in cycling and walking and creating space for people. But when the planners widen the road and narrow the pavement, even marginally, you make a very marginal decision about whether you'll carry on going through that route. It's like, I'm not into nudge theory and behavioural psychology because I'm kind of more about empowerment and citizenship and being in control, if you like, and having the skills and the capacity to do things. But we suddenly are diverted off down a different route, which has a massive effect later on. But it was only a marginal decision that caused it. And our food is one of those things where, well, we could just stock up on convenient things, pizza and frozen fries and all those kind of things, and ice cream. And it's a marginal decision, and the supermarkets are designed to make that an even narrower decision because they're all plentiful and available. What kind of, Jen, from a kind of psychological point of view, and I don't know what school of psychology you're from. Say that again, sorry.
Well, this solution-focused ideas really are the ones that have most influenced my thinking, and this idea of hope being so central. So when we do the group and when David talks to individual patients, it all starts with, genuinely what are their best hopes. And it might not be about weight, but it might be about, they usually say things like, I want to run around with the grandkids, or I want to enjoy my retirement, or
fashionable clothes is a
I want to look good at so whatever that is for the person individually that's actually going to motivate them. And then once you know that, you can tailor your conversation around that person's best hopes. You never get anywhere until you're on the same page as somebody else. You kind of pulling in different directions, but then you're on with it then, and then you can sort of agree a way forward. And also, I think doctors and the rest of us always forget to ask about people's strengths and resilience and competencies. And as human beings, we tend to focus on all the things we can't do, or should do better, or sort of self-critical, really. So encouraging people to think about how they've met challenges in the past, and who might be helping them, or what their character strengths are. Are they organised person? Are they a determined person? And putting all of that together as well, because that again helps people to see, actually, I can make a change. I've done these other things in my life. I'm a completely competent person. I have the confidence to sort of take these steps and make these changes. And then it's about small increments then, and encouraging people and supporting people. And David just did a tweet yesterday. We're really big on the idea of feedback to help people keep on track. And he did a brilliant tweet yesterday, which was just, he uses the graphs for people. So they, like, in terms of taking measurements, like maybe the blood sugars, or the liver function, or the weight is a common one. And the system in the practice, will produce a graph. And in the groups, we really noticed that when people were given their graphs as feedback, they absolutely loved them, and they would kind of hold on to them, and they would tell us that they'd stuck them on the fridge and shown the family, and those were really motivating. So even in lockdown, he's been printing out the graphs and sending them on. But also, that's another powerful tool for social media, because people love transformation photos, don't they? They love to see, they love story. We're kind of story based, aren't we, humans? So people love a good story, and the graphs sort of tell a story, really. I did this, started on this date, and after that, look what happened. And I think those are incredibly powerful, motivating that individual, but also other people who might be struggling with the same
Absolutely,
issue.
because that inspires hope in other people. A bit like the idea of remission of type 2 diabetes, which I'd never seen once in 25 years. And now I'm seeing it every week, because that becomes a hope for other people. They've seen it and they aspire to do the same. And they say to me, right, how do we do this?
And they believe in it, which is like, so you know about the placebo effect. And obviously that's all about hope and belief. That's all it can be, because say in studies where they're trying to control for the effects of a particular drug, the placebo will just be just a neutral substance. So the reason that they have to do those placebo-controlled trials is that we know the placebo effect is so powerful that if you give someone and they think it's going to help them, up to 70% of symptoms can improve. It's absolutely stunning, the placebo effect. So you can actually use that in medicine as a sort of, we should use that effect, that psychological effect, to further help people. So, obviously they know about David's work, they've seen other people do it.
So just to interrupt, in a way, for some people, hope is the placebo effect. So if you hope a red tablet will help pain, and it does, well, that was the placebo effect. But we can use, why on earth aren't we using hope as part of obesity, diabetes, so many other things? And I wanted to add something as well. Contrast what Jen was saying to the established paradigm of medicine. So the established paradigm is you come with pain or depression or whatever, the problem. We talk about your problem. You become the problem. And then I give you the drug for the problem. At no point in that have we talked about your hopes. At no point is there any idea that you have personal strengths, resilience, competence, that you've faced things before. So the whole conversation starts negative and becomes more and more.
It's all about helplessness, isn't it? It's about, you need a tablet, you can't sort it yourself. So this model is about, well, actually, I believe that you can sort it yourself. Going to help and sort of guide. But actually, we're not in people's homes closing the refrigerator door so they can't get that kind of piece of cake out or whatever it is. They have to get to the point where they're able to believe in themselves and to experience that that success and to keep going with it in the face of this environment that we all live in that's so obesogenic and crazy. You have to create this kind of new blindness to those aisles.
I find it almost impossible to walk around a city centre to find. So I always have to travel with my own food. I'm not perfect. I'm nudging going back towards keto because I've put a few pounds on. But if I'm terrified of going out to just have a lunch. If you go to an event or a conference and it's a table full of pastries and bread and all of these things, and you can't get past that.
To eat.
One of the things. The dimensions of this, I think you've got the medical dimension, then you've got the psychological, but I think you introduced something else, which was, if you like, a social or community dimension. So those having the groups meeting. How important have you found that?
I think it's really important partly because of this, you almost have to help people into this new culture or this new way of seeing the world. And it really helps if there's other people who are also seeing the world in that way and talking in that way, because otherwise friends and family can easily undermine and kind of say, that's going to kill you. And there's this wonderful idea about mirror neurons that humans, we've survived because if we see other people in the tribe, so to speak, acting in a certain way, that's a very, very powerful. We almost kind of don't have to think about it. It becomes much easier to then act that way ourselves. So this idea of, if you can find a community to support you in this new kind of behaviour, you're much more likely to stick with it. So that's the kind of groups that we run, but also online groups and people watching, like you say, YouTube videos of people speaking about it and doing other things. So I think it's an incredibly important piece of people being able to be successful long term.
Another aspect of this, I think, is patients often tell me that they've seen one of our patient experts who they identify with. So they think, well, if Eric can do it, and he's 72 and a bloke a bit like me,
he lives around the corner.
I believe I can do it. And that's so different. Seeing people like you who have done it is way different than an expert from on high saying, in my expert opinion. And that's the real benefit of these patient experts. And also, it's wonderful to see them answering each other's problems in the group work. It's not tiring, because I've learned so often you can let them answer it. Somebody asks a question, why don't I let a patient answer?
So they'll say things like, what should I take to work? Or, oh God, I'm going to a conference and I know it's going to be pastries and sandwiches. What do I do?
And
then other people say, well, I take it in a Tupperware. I got this from Lidl, and it's brilliant, really.
There's something about tacit knowledge between people. Which is, it doesn't need to, you don't need to consult a book about this, because you kind of, I don't need to consult an expert about this. Yeah. But they're the people who people have to they're part of that fog that you have to, everybody's got an opinion about what good nutrition is. And, certainly if you're using social media, there's umpteen numbers of people that you can follow. I remember seeing when I was teaching about this and looking at social media, and there was a Nike advert, I think it was, or somebody had made it looked like a Nike advert, and it was just said, "Fat, get the F out of my body." And I thought, this willpower idea that you get, all of that kind of, it just takes determination and grit to get through this. It's like, that's the fog, that's the nonsense, and a lot of it just is like, yeah, just do this. It's like lowering people's expectations about what they can and need to do, and not making it anything special. It's just part of the common stock of community knowledge.
Small, sustainable steps. It's
completely normal to just give up bread in our group.
Yeah.
That's normalised.
Yeah. They
just say, well, that's what we do.
I always use my mum, and I'll give her a shout out on this, because it's she got into low carb around the same time as I did, and found it kind of transformational, and mental health wise it helps. But she has arguments with people in cafes and restaurants that she doesn't want the chips and she doesn't want the baked potato. She's happy with the veg and the meat that comes. It's and pushing past that kind of peer pressure. It's like it's. Yeah, it's I suppose. And
you've got to have seen the benefits of doing it to allow you to sort of identify and be willing to have those conversations. Yeah.
So one of the things that we've kind of been able to do through this kind of process over the last couple of years is yes, you can have local groups that can meet at your local community centre or your surgery. But actually, we've got this other tool, which is social media. So what's your experience been? So David was a skeptic, Jen was saying earlier, about using social media. What's changed?
I used to tut at anybody texting. I was terrible. I didn't believe, children and mobile phones. I was so against it all. But the principle here is find your tribe. And I was alone.
Yeah.
I was a lone nut, they call them, don't they? Apart from Jen, of course. But I was alone, and social media allows you not to be alone and to find your tribe. And you're so much braver if you've got a group of people who say, well, I'm doing the same. And that's been
and how else would you get in contact with Prof. Tim Noakes in South Africa? In the past, it would have been really hard to do that.
So I found lots of aspects of my tribe. So I've now there's hundreds and hundreds of doctors. I think I've probably got thousands of doctors follow me now. So that's a big tribe. And then there's the tribe of patients and people who are low carb successfully. Mm-hmm. And then it all begins to add up more and more, because then as your Twitter following gets larger, then other people take you seriously. It's a rolling sort of program of extra influence, because then politicians begin to look. And I think at the moment, I think I've got probably 47 or 48,000 followers now. So politicians begin to be interested in what I have to say because they know my Twitter following is very large. So it grows and grows. It's very hard work in the beginning to build it up. But once you get a Twitter following going, you make friends. It's been a wonderful thing for me in most ways. There are some drawbacks, like dealing with trolls and one or two other things that we might talk about. But you find your tribe, you become more influential. I've learned a great deal about why people use Twitter. And because Twitter teaches you all the time, because you get feedback. So Jen would say, feedback, do more of what works. And I know what works because I look at the number of people. I know how many thousands of people have accessed any particular tweet. And over years, I'm refining what is it that people are interested in, do more of what works, which is absolutely Jen's teaching. Twitter's a laboratory.
Within that, how do you remain, because there's a really important thing about trust and accountability in terms of, this isn't just a free-for-all of indignation. Although Twitter has that element to it, which I use at times. I have two separate accounts, one for my my indignation and one for my professional work. But it's kind of how what is it the core of this that then has that kind of the blue tick on Twitter, isn't it? Kind of who are you accountable to is an important question.
There were some early lessons, I think, for healthcare professionals using social media, and the Royal College were very nervous of me using social media. And generally, I was told don't go anywhere near it at the beginning. But plainly, that can't be, and we have to learn how to do it. One of the things for Jen and I is general cheerfulness. So we're very disinclined to criticize anybody. You'll hardly ever find us saying something unpleasant about another person or another organization, because that isn't our ethos, really. So we try and be inexorably cheerful and optimistic. And if you don't criticize, we just don't talk about things.
Showing the
just
results.
Ignore what you don't like. So we're hardly ever outraged.
I'm a bit outraged
Jen
about
can be.
food, processed food and things like that. So
Yeah. And another thing, very important, I never get into personal slagging off with trolls. Because I don't think it establishes anything at all. And then after a while, they learn not to bother, because I simply will never respond. I just always ignore. And another most important thing for doctors is to bear in mind that what you're doing is in the public arena, and that people could take that as personal advice, or it could be dangerous. I always bear that in mind, or you won't sleep.
I don't know in kind of medical schools now that there is training about using media. How have you found that? Because previously the model of engaging with media was being taught how to write a press release and maybe ring up your local radio station or your local newspaper and try and get something in there. And it has to be neatly packaged. To part of a campaign, or the whole system had to be geared up. The health authority had to be geared up to doing this, and you were asked to pay a part. But you've kind of got this independent identity, and you can pursue your own interests, with the caveat that you're accountable and responsible to your colleagues and other professionals and your patients, and you're not generally just flying off with some flaky, wacky advice. This is valid. This has been based on published guidance.
I've learned a lot over the years. So say things like maybe, and not always, because you don't know. Try and be honest about what you do know and what you don't know. And if it's based on my clinical experience, well, that's valid. So it's fair to say that in my clinic I find this, because that's telling the truth. So I think being truthful is really important, and not to big it up beyond what you actually know. Well, otherwise you'll get into difficulty, because people will pull you to pieces. And that's what I've learned. I made errors in the early days where I overclaimed or whatever. And so slightly understate what you do is good. And then people learn to trust you. What do you think, Jen?
Yeah, I'd agree.
And also, of course, involving patients is great, but also potentially very difficult. So a really important idea is, first of all, about anonymizing any data. And secondly, the idea of consent. So that consent is not enough for my patients to say yes. They must know what they're saying yes to. So that if I'm going to use your graph or talk about your case, the patient concerned, I ask them. And in fact, they never say no, because they love being part of science. But the point is, you must get consent, you must obtain consent, and it must be informed consent. But if you can work with patients, it comes across on social media so well, this partnership between doctor and patient.
And there is a kind of, I think one of the things that's changed is an openness and transparency to the process. It gives people more confidence, but we need to. I mean, there's a discussion at the moment about the lockdown response and the government saying we're following the science. What science? People actually have the capacity to understand and to debate and deliberate and to think through these things. They can't just be told it's the science as if it's some kind of monolithic block.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and that brings me back to the old Dr. Unwin, who I just used to tell people what they should do. But what I've discovered is that people on the whole are intelligent, and they're intelligent, they have judgment. It's up to us as communicators to find ways to give them the facts and let them decide what they eat. I'm not telling you what to eat, but I can demonstrate how much sugar there is in cornflakes. And if you're avoiding sugar, well, then you'll avoid cornflakes. But that will be your decision based on what I supply you with. And I think so often we've mystified medicine. And if we can, so nutrition, it should be something that we can help people understand. And if you can't understand what I say, then actually perhaps I'm at fault and I should find a way to help you understand it. So and then it becomes collaborative.
Yeah, and co-produced. So the kind of solutions focus. I always like to finish the podcast because we're really good at picking over the problems, and actually spending a couple of minutes having an opportunity to celebrate the positive contribution, the positive changes, and the solutions. What would you kind of identify as being the kind of key things that you want to see change? As we come out of this into this new normal, what would be one or two headlines that you think would be simple, effective ways to change our thinking?
I think the real food message is a nice, simple and communicable thing, isn't it? That people do understand. Was it recently growing in a field, walking in a field, or swimming in the sea, that kind of thing. And the idea of eating more real food and where does our food come from? I think those are.
I've got a more basic one. I'd like people to understand that of all the people I see in every single surgery, every single day, I'd say 2/3 of them, they're there because of what they've eaten. I can't believe the difference that diet can make to good health.
Mentally and physically.
And that the various epidemics of poor health we are seeing doesn't have to be. And I'm putting diabetes into remission on a daily basis. I'm getting rid of high blood pressure, obesity, eczema, psoriasis, joint pain, heart failure, irritable bowel syndrome, celiac disease, psoriatic arthropathy. The list goes on and on and on. And that the message of hope is that eating real food can make a huge difference to your health. And most people do care about their health. And it's a wonderful alternative to lifelong medication.
Is it Robert Lustig who calls it processed food disease? I think that the label of what we call these things is now really important, and those kind of simple things are kind of quite effective.
Yeah, so that's my message of hope is most people wish to be healthy, and eating in a healthy way, I have found after all these years, so late in my career, has made a big difference personally to our entire family and my mother and my sister and my grandchildren.
And the neighbours.
And the neighbours. and the decorator and the plumber and the butcher up the road. And thousands of patients. And then we did the low-carb program, which went out. 440,000 people have done that around the world now. Mm. So those are messages of hope, that we can make a difference, and don't despair. We can make a difference.
Well, it's always fantastic listening to you both. So that optimism is just, it is infectious, and I think it's needed at the moment as well. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you if they want to follow up?
Twitter.
At Low-Carb GP, please follow me.
And I'm at Jen_Unwin.
I can't promise from this podcast that you'll get thousands of followers, but new followers. But
everyone counts.
Everyone counts.
But it's quality, not quantity. That's what I would say. So thank you very much for your time. It's been really fascinating, and there's a lot more that we could talk about and discuss. Yeah. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm Decentered Media on Twitter and Instagram, and if the website is decentered.co.uk, if you want to pop over to Patreon, maybe make a donation for a cup of tea or some biscuits. Oh no, we can't have biscuits now. So I always say biscuits. Almonds, yes, or some cheese or something like that. Then look for Decentered Media on Patreon as well. But until next time, thank you very much to Jen and David. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Decentered podcast. I'm Rob Watson. If you want to find out more information, contact me on Decentered Media via Twitter or go to decentered.co.uk.